Welcome, Siam, and thank
Hey
you very
Leah.
much. Hi, thank you so much for spending some time with me. And just to check, have you been distracted at any point this morning by any cat videos?
No, just Waitrose delivery and the cleaner, really. That's it.
That's
I'm
great.
still in my dressing gown.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to ask, but that's perfect. And also, congratulations on the most controversial talk of the event.
Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was fascinating. It was fascinating being in the audience and watching your talk and also kind of feeling the reaction of the audience as well. And I wonder, did you anticipate it being the controversial talk? Was that your intention or?
It's really odd because I've got two distinct friend groups. I've got most of my friends are other business owners and entrepreneurs and investors, so to speak. And the feedback when I showed them, they loved it. Nearly all of my business friends said, "Yeah, rock on, go for it." And then I showed it a handful of like sort of non-business friends, like some close family, and yeah, and they didn't like it at all. They thought, "Who are you to try and wade into that a sector that you're not part of, etc." And from what I found from the actual TED event is that I had the same sort of reaction. So
Mm.
um, yeah, it was interesting. I think there's like one or two teachers on Twitter that really got their knickers in a twist. But hey, I'm still going to do it.
No, I mean it's so fascinating and just I mean on what you say there because obviously you've got an experience into the world of entrepreneurs that many people don't have. I mean I'm personally starting to look at it myself and start to get a feel of that from having been very kind of need a job mindset.
Yeah,
But what you say there, like it seems like there's quite a different mindset for people in the entrepreneurial world where it's like,
oh,
yeah,
hugely.
if you have an idea, go for it. Whereas the rest of us, and I, kind of include myself in that category in part, I'm sort of moving away from it now, but where it's like, yeah, but who are you? And that's a really interesting kind of division that you've experienced there.
Yeah,
Mm.
I guess like whenever you look at any industry which is being disrupted, it tends to and when I say disrupted, I mean it in a good way, like making more efficient, like Uber or
Mm.
Airbnb, etc. The a lot of the people entering or doing the disrupting have no previous experience within those industries, and as such, they can see things plain as day without any bias, and take the most logical approach. And unfortunately, as I said in the talk, a lot of the old-fashioned advice which used to be relevant is now actually quite dangerous advice. I call it the 40-40
Mm.
plan, working 40 hours a week for 40 years and then retiring on a pension 40% of what you struggled to live on in the first place. It's it's actually realistic. It's probably more like the 50-50-50 plan these days.
Mm.
And one of the key things that I mentioned this to my wife Ellie the other day is that one of the key things that separates my sort of business friends and my non-business friends is how open their minds are. So I tell them to their face, by the way. It's not like I'm talking behind their back. I
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
look, you need to open your mind more and be, and aim to improve yourself, get more knowledge, get more skill sets, information, read more. I mean, I go through about 4 to 5 books a month,
Mm.
and so do my other friends. But my sort of non-business friends, I think they read one book a year, which would probably be, I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey of some sort. But I go, yeah. So yeah, it's odd. I did sort of expect the marmiteness of the talk, but I didn't think some people get really sort of really strongly passionate against it.
Mm. I think there's a defensiveness as well. I mean, you mentioned there the 40-40-40 and like as you say now more like 50-50-50 and the immediate reaction I think from especially teachers in the audience was but we work more like 60 hours and it wasn't like to
Yeah,
contradict what you're saying as a point, but I think it was said more as like but this guy doesn't know us. He doesn't know like hard it is or how challenging it is. And I'm just wondering, like, if you were to do this talk again in the future,
Yeah.
if you would spend more time trying to come from the mindset of those who you're trying to, I guess, show a way out to.
So yeah, that was sort of. So the thing is, I know exactly where teachers are coming from, and when the compere said, so what experience do you have in the industry, and I said none. Obviously that, and I mean, I meant as being a teacher or whatnot. But the thing is, I am an educator. I've taught thousands of people how to invest and invest properly and not like the scammy stuff you see online. I know how to teach, and what I've found just through empirical experience is that just having like forcing people to sit there still for many hours a day staring at a screen just does not work. And especially when you're teaching people how to trade or invest properly or manage their finances properly, you need to really 100% make sure that whoever you're teaching or educating, that they are retaining the information. And so, and just from personal experience, I know that the schools just aren't doing as well as they could do. But it's not the teacher's fault; it's the system's fault. And I feel that the teachers have their hands tied behind their back because they have so many deadlines to hit, so many targets to hit. The school itself is worrying about how they're standing against other schools and how Ofsted are going to sort of rate them, etc. And so teachers don't really have a say in the matter. And I know lots of teachers. I mean, I mentor underprivileged kids in my free time, and I speak to teachers. All of my wife's friends are teachers, so I do know the stresses that they go through and how frustrated they are whenever someone says, "Oh, you teachers, you get like 10 weeks holiday a year or whatnot," and all the planning it goes behind, with each class. I'm fully aware of all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a way to look at it from a completely fresh angle. I mean, when you said you have no experience in it, I think I understood what you meant, because I'm fresh to education as well in the last year.
Yeah.
A year ago, I was like, who am I to do anything in here? And I just thought, well, I'm just going to try and learn stuff. So I actually respected that you said that so openly. But also, during the talk, and you mentioned that you do mentoring just there, it's clear that you work with people, that you teach people. I mean, you don't get to the kind of position that you're in without helping other people, because that's how we all, share value and things. And just before we move on to like discuss your idea in detail, I'm interested in your positivity, because really, I mean, if anyone sees the kind of the things people have said to you and then what you said back, you've always been very like you're positive about it. And I think that shows, that's a lot of resilience. That's a lot of, not fear of failure, which was discussed a lot in the other talks.
Yeah.
Have you always been so positive, or is this something that you've learned or developed?
No, not always, actually. It's so I used to be an Air Force pilot, and going through military training and everything is rather regimented, and you become institutionalized, and it's pretty much all of my old Air Force friends are, some of them, they're the most pessimistic, negative people I know. And that's mainly due to sort of military training, because you always have to think, what's the downside, what's the risk, because, there are occasions where lives are at risk. And since leaving the Air Force, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which, I mean, I buy probably a good 500 copies every year, and no one leaves my house without a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad and a few other books. And I had, a sort of facepalm moment where I realized I was so narrow-minded, I was so fixed, right, I've got to be a pilot, I've got to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, right, I'll work till I'm 70 and then hopefully have a big fat pension. But gone are the days where pensions are a good thing. I mean, not all pensions are bad, I have to state. But going back to the positivity side, when I started sort of devouring all these self-help books, and I realized that you have 100% control of your thoughts. And having negativity, anger, frustration, or stress, it it doesn't affect anyone else. It only affects you. And I personally believe that negativity is like a virus, because if negative thoughts breed, or negativity breeds in your brain. So the moment you have any negativity, you need to eject it. You need to get rid of it as soon as possible, because negative thoughts breed into negative feelings and emotions. Negative feelings and emotions then breed into negative actions, and then negative actions breed into negative consequences. So I suppose a very accelerated version of this is road rage. You could be happy as Larry singing to, I don't know, Taylor Swift or whatnot, and then all of a sudden a big white van man cuts you up, and then instantly you've gone from happy singing state to rage, and then, some people, you go into rage, and then you may want to try and re-overtake or undertake them, and then an accident could happen. So that's a very accelerated version of that. And so, yeah, there's literally no point in negativity. And I really did, I could speak for a long time about failure and the fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of losing out and all that. And you're only a failure if you quit. If there's something you really want to do and you know that it's the right thing for you and that you should be doing it, if you come up against a hurdle, then you just go, oh, it's too hard, or you quit, then you are a failure. But really, failing at stuff is just progression, as long as you treat it as a learning point. Because then you in the Air Force, we have a thing called do, review, apply. So anything happens, you do it, review it, and then and you just do that. And so you need to sort of, one of the things I say a lot to my students and my investing students, and also my mentees, is that you need to change the types of questions that you ask yourself and the quality of questions that you ask yourself. So for instance, the types of questions. So let's say we've all been into a shop, we've looked at a widget or a dress or a house or whatever, car, and gone, oh, I would love that. You look at the price tag and go, oh, bugger, I can't afford that, or it's too expensive. Now, the word too expensive is not true. You just can't afford it. Nothing's too expensive, to a degree. But and then you walk out the shop and then forget about it. Now, to me, that's plain mental laziness, because you haven't thought about, worked out a way how you can achieve that. So the first type of question you need to say to yourself is, okay, what needs to happen in order for me to walk out of this shop with this widget? What do I need to do to buy this widget? And then, yes, you won't be able to afford it straight away, but guess what? The more that you ask yourself those questions, the more that your brain, your subconscious, or your mind in general start tinkering over it, whether when you're sleeping, whether you're daydreaming, whatever. And then eventually, you will become more open-minded. You can train yourself to become more sort of aware of things. And then it gets to a point where something clicks in your head, and then you realize we are living in a world, we are far richer than we have ever been at any point. Even if you're poor in the UK today, you're still richer than any king or queen like hundreds of years ago, or even 100 years ago. We have running water, hot water, toilets, and you're not going to starve to death. We are as rich as we've ever been. So I've sort of I went off on a tangent there.
I know. I think it's hugely fascinating, the kind of story and your own sense of what you've seen and developed in terms of what's there to not be grateful for. But what interests me is that you weren't always so positive, and that's been a journey for you as an adult. And then I can understand now your passion to help young people to not kind of ever go down the route of feeling like there's no options. Have I got that right?
Yes. Basically, you can do anything you freaking want to do. There's nothing stopping you. And I hear people with the same excuses all of the time. I'm not rich enough. I'm not clever enough. I'm not from the right background. I haven't got the right exams, qualifications, nothing. Well, I'm actually very proud that I got 2 Ds for my A-levels, and I still managed to become an Air Force pilot. I'm now financially independent. I did it at the age of 28/29. I can't remember when. And I did that with no qualifications, and it's just because of a dogged mindset of always, whenever you come up against an obstacle, going, okay, what do I need to do to make this work? What needs to happen to make this work? Or if something bad happens, what needs to happen so this never happens again? You must always grow, because the moment you stop learning and growing, I personally believe you basically start shriveling and dying internally anyway. And so, yeah, so going back to the types of questions, yeah, so you need to start, the moment you start training yourself to go, right, what needs to happen, or what do I need to do to achieve this or buy this, etc., you realize we live in a world of opportunity. And so that's only stage one, but then you need to start changing the the quality of questions that you ask yourself. So it's all very well saying, okay, what do I need to do to buy this widget? But a better question will be, what do I need to do? What needs to happen for me to buy this shop? That way I can have every widget. And the thing is, thinking big and thinking small takes roughly the same amount of energy and time. And because so many people think small, it's very convoluted. There's so much competition when you think small, but when you think big, there's less competition, and you will be surprised what you can achieve when you think big. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to think big. I'm like Elon Musk. If 10 years ago, if you met Elon Musk and he said, I'm going to change and revolutionize the whole motoring industry and I'm going to kill the fossil fuel car, you would have laughed at him. Or a lot of people did laugh at him and said it will never happen. But he's very much on his way to turning motoring into sort of a green sort of a transport, or that's his goal for green transport, so to speak. And that is that's the angle I'm coming at. I don't want to change one school. I don't want to change a group, a teaching union and whatnot. I want to change the way the schooling system is so that our teachers can prosper and flower. Because I know that a lot of people, in fact, I had more positive feedback from my talk on the TEDx day than negative. I had probably 30 teachers, say, this is amazing, I need to be part of this, etc. Obviously, I then had the other critics saying, oh, they only did that because they want a 60 grand a year job minimum, etc. But no, I think this is, again, going to be, I'm going to piss off a lot of people saying this, but I personally believe that those that really didn't like my talk were closed-minded and small-minded, and they couldn't see the bigger picture. And if they are, and I believe that if we do keep on our schooling system as it is, we are really detrimenting our future kids. I mean, sorry, I'm on a bit of a
no, go for it. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. One of the things I'll just say this here is that one of the things people really loved about your talk, I think, across the board, is the passion you have for this. So you've not sat on this idea so long that you just stopped caring about it or anything like that. You've just gone, this idea, go. And your do, review, apply thing, you have done a TED talk, and now we get to talk about it, and now we get to look at the ideas and evolve it. And certainly several people on the day who I know who were very positive about your work, they were asking me where you were because they wanted to speak with you about collaborations, which is different to the can you please give me a job for that money? They're looking at it as an evolving project.
Exactly. I've had about 4 or 5 other speakers on the day that said, this is great, let's work together, and combined we can do something. I feel really bad, I forgot his name. The guy who does learning through fun. You remember he had he had blonde hair, tall guy.
I can picture him. I can picture faces. I'll pop him on the links. Yeah, but that was brilliant. That was camouflage learning.
Yeah, that's it. Camouflage learning. His company is amazing. I'm loving what he does, and I would love. We will be talking in detail in the future because I'd love to implement fun learning and what he does into our schools. And if you look at Finland, Norway and Finland are way up there in the high echelons of good schooling. I mean, look at Finland. They have the most effective schools in the world. They have the highest sort of global test scores in the Western world. They've got the most literate nation, and they do pretty much the exact opposite of what we do, which begs to ask some questions. I mean, you think, okay, well, what the hell are they doing? Well, they have no formal academic training until they're 7 years old. So up until then, it's just fun learning. They're letting kids be kids. They're sending kids into the woods and saying, right, get out of the woods. Here's a compass and a map, etc. They're very short school hours to begin with and light homework. And like their teachers, they're higher trained than most other nations, and they need a master's degree in education with a specialization in research or classroom practice, etc. And the teaching, as in the profession, is as prestigious and revered as doctors.
Mm.
I mean, that's amazing. Why would we not want that in the UK?
After this, I'll point you to some literature actually on that, because that's an area I've been looking at. And for example, Tim Oates in the UK and a few others have been looking at the timeline of all of this. And there's some interesting things to look at in terms of what happened when and things like that. So I've got some literature which I'll send you, which I think will be helpful. We'll move on to like explore your ideas.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, actually, my first kind of question is, obviously you came in, you said 13 ideas, and yet we're talking now about how you have a big vision and things like this. So before we go into the details of what you discussed, how much can you see these 13 ideas that you presented here, say if you learn more and as you develop your own understanding and connections, would you consider these ideas fixed? Would you consider them flexible? Or is it just like the do review apply? You have done where you're at now, let's talk about it.
It would be hypocritical of me to say, right, these are the best 13 things that we have to do. And so those 13 principles, they're my personal opinions. And what the really annoying thing is, I missed out a whole section. I was really, I do a lot of public speaking, but I was super nervous on that day.
Do you share the secret section?
Well, yeah, basically what it was going to give more context to everything. So before I was presenting these 13 thoughts, I was going to say that my plan is that you simply don't know what you don't know. And I'm acutely aware of what I do know. I know my skills. I know that anything I want to do, I've always achieved in life. I had people say that, right, you'll never be a pilot because you're stupid, so I know I can do it, and I'm aware of what I don't know, and I don't know what is the best way for the best schooling system. So what I plan to do is my bandwidth, I've got a few ventures on at the moment, so my bandwidth is quite tied up. But when I'm free to really start pressing the go button on this, I'm going to personally fund and hold a big conference and get the best minds in education, research. I'm going to get a whole load of school representatives from Scandinavia to come along, and we're going to have a big group of maybe between 20 to 50 people, of the best people. And I've got a whole bunch of questions. I've got a list of about 50 different questions which need answering. And the answers to these questions will help form what the best way forward is. So everyone it will be probably a 2-day to maybe a 5-day conference or workshop or whatnot, and we will not leave without a blueprint of the perfect schooling system. And so these 13 points are what I personally believe would be beneficial. But even if we came after that sort of that conference day, the brainstorming session, and realized that all of these 13 points are absolute hogwash and useless, I will be happy. All I want is the blueprint. I need that blueprint. Once I know what I need to implement, I can then use my skills, what I'm good at and doing. So the first thing, is the review part. I need to find out. However, I'm pretty confident that some of those 13 will be part of the final blueprint, though.
I'm really glad you shared that, actually. And again, on the day when you had the question answer session just after your talk, which isn't on the video, so that was just for the people who were there live. The other point where I think you won a lot of people over was where you said, and I hope I've got this right, you said this was like your 40-year plan. Yeah,
I'm not going to do this overnight. You have to be realistic with these things, and also there's going to be lots of legislation that will probably get in the way, red tape. The UK and the US are just ridiculous when it comes to bureaucracy and red tape. So yeah, And also, the other thing I didn't mention on that day is that these schools will not be for everyone. They are not designed to be the new state school. There's a thing in business called an MVP, minimum viable product. So what you do when you're setting up a business is you don't go. Let's say you want to set up a new restaurant or whatever. You don't go in and buy the property and get all the staff, get all the systems in place, spend like 100 or 200 grand, and then realize, oh, actually, no one likes my food. You do an MVP. So you set up like the most basic, good enough to launch, but very small scale to see, is this good? And then if your business idea is working, you get traction, you get customers, then you start to scale. Do review, apply, always. And so my schools will be effective MVPs, minimum viable products, and they will be independent. They'll be probably private, because a lot of the things that I'd like to implement needs, some sort of funding. I mean, I'm going to be putting nearly all of my personal wealth into this, but it's not going to be for everyone. And the parents that will put their kids into these schools, they will be fully aware that these schools initially will be around setting these kids up to be producers and employers, not employees. So, and that, as you can see, I've got a lot of business friends that want their kids to be in our schools, and I've got a baby on the way. And the thing is, one of the reasons I want to do this is I don't trust any school to look after my kids. I went to Gresham's in Norfolk, which is supposed to be the best school in East Anglia, or one of them. It was a private boarding school, and I feel very privileged to have gone there. However, I don't think I would send my kid to Gresham's. I mean, they're amazing when it comes to sport. Yeah, I mean, they really do. But I mean, Norwich School would be better for academics. In fact, there are many other schools better than Gresham's for academics. But yeah, I just want my kids to have the best learning experience. So it's doubly incentivized for me.
Yeah, and certainly I think when we heard that it's a long-term vision, there was kind of a sigh of relief, I think. The people who are like, oh, wow. And, we're aware that you have wealth, and that I think the thing is that in the economy we have, when you have wealth, when you have money, you can make stuff happen. And I think especially people who maybe haven't quite learned to be okay with money and money flow and things like that. Yeah, I think there can be a sense of unfairness there. Like, this random guy can come in, he's got these ideas and he can make it happen. This is scary. But actually it's really good hearing you talk about the way you want to learn and collaborate, and that these ideas were presented as a presentation to get a conversation started, and not as the actual blueprint, which we're then all going to agree to. So I think that's really good. I'm gonna move on to
topics.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to leave people to watch the video to kind of see the steps, so we won't kind of go into detail on them here. What about for you then? So in terms of, one of the kind of things that you were really passionate about in the talk was to make the profession of teaching prestigious.
Yeah.
How next steps for you, if we talk about, say, the next year or two? I mean, I know you talked about that kind of conference thing, but next year or two, what are you thinking?
So I'm actually, for the foreseeable future, I won't be able to start anything for the next 18 to 24 months. So the first port of call will actually be that big super conference and getting the best people in to hash out that blueprint, so to speak. However, obviously this is still embryonic stages, but that is one of the questions. Actually, one of my sort of 50-odd questions is, how do we turn this profession into, being so prestigious, etc. So I sort of asked a few people, I held a few free surveys online and whatnot, and I realized that from a lot of people judge the prestigiousness of a profession by the pay. And it's quite shallow, isn't it? That, right, the higher earning jobs are the more prestigious ones, when it shouldn't be like that. I personally think, like, nurses should be one of the most prestigious, like, professions out there. They do such an amazing job. I mean, doctors, they have, they're revered, and quite rightly so, but nurses and junior doctors and all that, they're very much underloved, and teachers fall into the same bracket. So the very basic thing, the easy thing we can do is literally just bump up the basic pay so that, that our teachers aren't worrying about money problems, etc. So out of the gate, that is a quick fix, so to speak.
I mean, based on the title of your talk and the enthusiasm for what you're going to say, I think, I think there was a hope for like an answer of how to do this. Apart from that, in your schools, you would pay this because you think teachers are worth this. I think there was kind of a hope of like what have the government missed about how to handle all the finances in education, which was interesting. I was going to ask about like, obviously you're conscientious, you've got this global vision, it's not just UK, and it's about everything really. And I was going to ask about kind of the influences on this. I think Ken Robinson will probably feature highly on that list. Like, how long have you been thinking about impacting on education? Has this been like something you've always thought about doing, or just something sort of fairly recently?
It's funny, when I was a kid, I've always wanted to be three things. I wanted to be a pilot, a policeman, and a teacher. I don't know why. And I've never been a policeman. I don't think I ever will. But at least I've done the pilot and the teaching bit. So I'm already teaching. And so I've always loved educating and education, so to speak. And I'm just an avid learner. I mean, you should never ever stop learning. That's the biggest sin ever, especially with things like Google and YouTube around. But in terms of the whole schooling thing and really changing it, it's been on my mind for a good at least 3 years now. I've been slowly just trying to get the pieces in the puzzle, and I realised I wouldn't be able to do anything, substantial without sort of sorting myself out first and getting myself into the position where I do have the contacts, I do have the ability to start doing stuff. And so my ducks are all in a row, and I'm just sort of knocking one off as I come along, so to speak.
Yeah.
When
was it you found Ken Robinson's work then on this?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Because obviously he features prominently on this.
He's just amazing, and I would love it. I'll do whatever it takes to get him at least to the conference or to some sort of influence, because I really do like every idea he's got. I agree with. But again, that big conference, some of his ideas may not be correct. We don't know. I can't just have him on a pedestal and go, right, everything he says, let's do. We have to discuss and hash out every single thing. Have
you seen, just out of interest, and again I can point you to stuff, have you seen the quite harsh criticisms of Ken Robinson's talks from teacher bloggers? Have you seen that kind of thing?
Yes and no. Yes, I have.
And interestingly, it's similar to the criticism of yours in that, but where's the answer? But which is why I think it's been really good for us to chat here, is because you're saying, well, I did a presentation and now it's out there and now we can talk about it, which is where it can move forward to.
So no one has the answers, but we'll be getting pretty close to what the answer should be once we've got all of the best minds in the room. And I'm really shocked that there are loads of organisations out there like the RSA and whatnot who are trying to progress education, so to speak. But it may have already been done, but from my knowledge, I don't think no one's ever really got all the best minds in the world to really try and get something going. But yeah.
Are you UK focused or like global education focused, or is like the UK schools that the kind
initially
of
the UK
viable and then
well the tiniest MVP will be the first sort of pop-up school, so to speak, in Norwich or wherever, and then once we've got one school working really well, then we can start creating a network, and then once we sort out our own doorstep, so to speak, then we can sort of help other countries. I really like what the Khan Academy is doing, and there's all sorts of things like virtual reality, how that will really help learning. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Whatever happens.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if it takes like 20 years and we still don't know what the best way is, only good can come of this. So I really don't understand when people say I shouldn't even bother doing this. this, or I shouldn't be allowed to do this. Well, only good can come of this.
I think
So
having the conversation, exactly as you say, whatever happens, having the conversation will challenge people to think, and isn't that what education's about in the end?
exactly. And just why is Finland so much better than us? What are they doing, etc. I mean, their results
They
are
had, this is part of the literature, I think I'll get
yeah,
this
yeah,
right, it was about 20 years ago, they had quite a open national dialogue over what education is, what it's for, and then there was a lot of focus in building that. So what we see now is the result of like the end point of that building,
yeah.
and then it's obviously being noticed that way. But yeah, it's cool, awesome.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll send you the literature just so we don't like go on a massive other tangent. One
Yeah,
final kind of
go for it.
teeny tiny question to end on, and it just so happens, like, as soon as Ken Robinson's come up, a friend of mine sent me, or like pointed me to a video that he did. I don't know when he did it, but it's kind of it's not a big talk. It's him talking with a few students, I think in an American school, about what his ideal school would look like, and it just reminded me of your talk.
Yeah.
And one of the students asked him the question, what would you call this? And he said, first of all, well, it wouldn't be the Ken Robinson School. He said, the question to you is like, what do you think of this name for your potential school system? He said he'd like to call it something like the Explore Academy, because that's what education is. It's an exploration of
Yeah.
the outside world and also yourself. Thoughts on that
Yeah.
to end?
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a bit sort of self-centered calling a school after you. You're like, I would never have it as the Siam Kids School.
Yeah.
That's never ever going to happen. But yeah, something like that, and yeah, I agree.
Perfect. So
Yeah,
thumbs up to the Explore Academy
yeah, or any
or
something
anything
like
else.
that. Yeah, something which just sparks a bit of um, sort of a bit of like a journey. Like for instance, silly fact, but um, I used to give away $100 trillion notes so whenever I went to a restaurant, I used to give a tip like as in pound sterling, but I'd also used to leave $100 trillion note, which was in Zimbabwean dollar. It's the biggest note ever to have existed, and the reason I left that is not because of the novelty thing, but I was hoping that the waiter or the waitress would go, "Oh, what's this? $100 trillion? That can't be real," and then start a mini journey into learning about hyperinflation and then getting and start, yeah, learning. And I got one waiter come back to me, I think it was Wagamama's or something, and said, "Hey, you're that Zimbabwe guy." I was like, "Really?" Yeah, and he said, "Yeah," and he started learning all about financial education as a result of that note.
Ah,
So anything that sparks learning, I'm happy.
that's such a great story to finish on. Thank you so much for your time,
No, thank you for your
Diane. Really great speaking with you. And yeah, I'll end recording now, but we'll probably just chat for a couple of minutes before we go. So thank you
awesome.
everyone for watching, listening to this interview. Thank you, Siam, for being here.